Hello, I realise that the people who subscribe to this probably didn't sign up for all this craft content, but you're going to get it, because that's what I'm doing at the moment, referenced by the fact that I am covered in Jasmonite all over from all of the sanding I've been doing this morning. Okay, so a common question that I see on Facebook pages for resin and Jasmonite stuff is the difference between the two. As I've been doing resin for about 3 years now, and I've been doing Jasmonite for, what month are we on? Like 8 months. I know a little bit about both of them now. I know a lot more about resin than I do about Jasmonite, but because I already came into Jasmonite with a background knowledge of resin, I think I probably learned to do Jasmonite quicker than if I didn't know stuff about resin. So we'll start off with the very practical difference of like, what is it? What is Jasmonite? So Jasmonite is a sort of concrete based, you see it called an eco resin. It is 2 parts like resin is. You get a powder and a liquid, you mix the 2 parts and you pour it into a mould like you do with other stuff. So I'm literally sitting in front of me, I have some examples. So it is not clear like resin is. It is almost like this white colour, so anything colour that you put in it is going to turn out like pastel-y. You can't get bright colours, it just takes a little bit more work. So yeah, you mix it, you pour it like resin, but it is made out of different stuff and it has a slightly different finish. So people call it eco resin. I have issues with it being called eco resin. It is not plastic. It is called biodegradable. Now, I always have questions about the term biodegradable. I always require a bit more information, which I currently do not have. Basically because biodegradable, I mean everything's biodegradable. Plastic's biodegradable eventually. So yeah, I never really know what that means. The reason that I would consider it more eco-friendly than resin is because resin is a plastic, whereas this is more of a concrete based thing, which is slightly better, but it is never going to be eco-friendly. There is almost nothing you can do that is craft wise or anything that creates new things that is going to be eco-friendly, that is going to be neutral for the environment or better for the environment, you know, improving things. I'm not going to say there's nothing. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. There may be things that exist, but at the end of the day, you are buying stuff. You are probably, you know, I get my Jasmonite shipped to me. I'm making stuff out of it, which didn't exist beforehand. I am buying the stuff to, you know, make the products into products. So the findings, the earring hooks, the necklaces, things like that. I'm using the pigments. I don't know if the pigments are particularly eco-friendly. I don't know much about how Jasmonite is made, the process of it being made. There is no such thing as eco-friendly consumption, essentially. It's a whole other conversation to get into, but the point is that people refer to it as eco-resin. I don't really like that. It is an alternative to resin. It is better for the environment than resin is, but it's definitely not eco or eco-friendly. I don't like seeing it called that. Now, that being said, it is a little bit better for the individual person using it. As you might know with resin, as I mentioned in my So You Want to Start Resin video, which I posted like 2 years ago I think, it is dangerous. You wear gloves, you do it outside, you wear a respirator, you cover your arms, cover all your skin. It can cause, even then it can cause serious allergic reactions. Resin is something that you have to be careful with working with. You have to be aware of the risks, you have to mitigate against those risks. It is not the most straightforward thing. I think people see it as like a fun craft that they can like do in their spare time. It is not that. You need to know what you're doing, and you need to be aware of the risks that you are taking. There is no way to do this without accepting some level of risk. Jasmonite, you don't have to do most of those things. So I definitely wear gloves to do this. You do not need to wear a respirator. I do it with ventilation, so I do it mostly on my desk or in my back garden if the weather's nice, and I will open the window. That's about as much as you need. Now, it's never going to be 100% fine. The lines, I guess this is what we're working with now. It is never going to be 100% safe. It is quite dusty, so you are going to be breathing in dust because it is a powder. So I know some people just wear like normal COVID masks to prevent you breathing that stuff in, which I do sometimes if I'm doing a lot all at once. As I said, I try and do it in my back garden when I can, but it is nowhere near as dangerous as resin is. Now, as far as I'm aware, Jesmonite is epoxy based. There is epoxy in Jesmonite, but as far as I'm aware, it doesn't work in the same way. I am also going to put a caveat on this. A lot of companies claim that resin is safe. What they actually mean is that the two pieces uncombined are safe. When you combine them, they're off gas. That is the dangerous part. There is parts of the individual elements which is not a good idea to get on your skin, but most of the time they're fine until you mix it. That is where the issues start. Therefore, because Jesmonite is currently such like I don't want to say small community, but it's a relatively it's a lot smaller than resin is. It may be that there is consequences to this that people haven't discovered yet. And because there is a risk of you breathing something in, you are using chemicals. That is something to be aware of. So let's get down a bit more to the technical stuff. Let's start at the beginning. You are mixing stuff. I do resin by volume, not by weight. You can do it either. As far as I'm aware, you can only do Jesmonite by weight. I just bought a cheap set of scales from Amazon, and I use that to weigh the stuff out. So I do that by weight. You can mix in silicone. It will not stick to silicone, just like resin is. So I use silicone cups to mix in. What I also use sometimes is clear cups from getting drinks like coffee and stuff like that, because those are clear, which helps with the mixing. So unlike resin you can kind of see when it's not mixed. Jesmonite, it is very obvious. Resin, sometimes not fully mixing is fine. You might get some blurry bits, but as long as the unmixed bit is right in the middle, you've got everything cured around it. I'm gonna shut it down. There we go. So yeah, because sometimes it doesn't really make a difference. In Jesmonite, sometimes it doesn't make a difference. You might get some lumps. Most of the time those lumps are going to come up to the top though, and it's going to make it look a bit gross. You're going to end up with more bubbles. With resin, you're fighting the bubbles, and the bubbles are very, very hard to get rid of. You want to mix really, really slowly but thoroughly for a while. Pour slowly, maybe get rid of them with a lighter or some alcohol. But with Jesmonite, it is a lot easier. So you can mix as fast as you want. And the way you get rid of bubbles is to jiggle. You tap and move the mould around as much as you can. You keep doing this. I keep doing it until the skin starts to form on the top, which says it's starting to cure. Because if you still tap it while the skin's forming, the skin you'll actually get like a wibbly surface where this like wave has become part of the Jesmonite, which is another thing as well. Jesmonite cures a lot faster than resin does. You can get things to put in the Jesmonite which slow down the cure time, which makes things easier. I've never used it personally, but I feel stress when mixing stuff because I'm like, I need to get this in before it starts curing. I tend to not get that with resin. Depending on the type of resin you're using, obviously a smaller pour rate versus like a deeper casting resin. Shallower one's gonna cure faster than a deeper one. Pretty standard rules of resin. If you're pouring something deep, you use a deeper casting resin. If you're pouring something smaller, you use a smaller casting resin. Pretty straightforward. Smaller casting resins cure quicker. With Jesmonite, what I've found, I've worked with AC 100 and AC 730. They are different types of Jesmonite, which I'll talk about in a second. AC 100 cures a lot faster than AC 730. I haven't tried AC 300 though, so I can't comment on that one. But yeah, cures a lot faster, so be prepared for that. So again, as you use different types of resins for different things, so I use glass cast, and there's 3, 10 and 50. I used to use 50 because it cures slower. I actually still kind of like using 50. I've started using 10 because it tends to be a bit easier to get hold of, but yeah, that's, mixture of personal preference and what you're pouring. Same goes for Jesmonite. So the ones that I've worked with are AC 10. So 10 is very, very smooth. It's quite silky. It's relatively lightweight. It is a bit heavier than resin, so for example this casting resin would be appropriate for an earring. It's too heavy to be an earring in Jesmonite. So yeah, AC 100, very, very smooth, very silky. But I also use 730, which I'll grab you an example of. I actually have two things here, one done in 100 and one done in 730 to give you an example. So this is 100, this is 730. The first thing you're going to notice is that the 100 is, again, really silky, really, really smooth, quite tactile. However, this one is a lot rougher. Now, this one that I'm using has like a granite texture to it, and that is actually part of it. That was something that I paid for to get. You can see I messed up a little bit over here, but that's fine. So yeah, you can see a little bit of the difference. So this was the same technique made to make both of these. They come out looking a little bit different. The reason that you might want to use one over the other rather than it being pouring depth is use. So AC 100, not waterproof. If you get water on this, it will stain. AC 730, you can get water on it. It's not recommended to get too much water on it, but it is pretty much waterproof and pretty much heat proof. So you can use this for things like coasters and soap dishes and things like that. It also just has a different look, you know, depends on what you're going for. AC 100, you don't necessarily have to sand. AC 730, if you get one with the special effects, like this one is the granite one, you will need to sand it in order to be able to see those effects. I think that's pretty much the only differences from the two I can think of off the top of my head. There might be a little bit more. This is heavier than this as well. So yeah, I would say this is maybe twice the weight of this one. But yeah, they just are used for different things. I believe they cost the same. So yeah, the next thing you need to think about if you're using different types of Jasmonite and what you need to do with it is sealing. This is not something you need to do with resin. It's a little bit similar to doming if you dome your resin, but you will need to seal Jasmonite. I use this sealer here, which is from Etsy. It smells amazing. So yeah, it's just like a wax, and you put it on your things and it helps them stay more waterproof. So I seal everything, including the stuff that I don't think is going to come into contact with water, just because I think it makes it feel nicer, but also I think it makes it it's probably more likely to last a bit longer if I do things like that. Jasmonite does break. Resin, very, very difficult to break. You can throw it as hard as you want. Very hard, probably not going to smash. This stuff will smash. I've smashed it on purpose a few times to make some different effects. I do have to throw it, like fully throw it on a concrete floor to break it, but it is breakable. Yeah, which comes to another part. It is because of the durability, it is a lot less, so it's a lot more brittle, which means that with resin you can drill pieces. I've never successfully drilled a piece of Jasmonite. I have seen other people do this, but drilling a piece for resin to get like a little finding in, quite easy to do. Resin's quite tough, so it might take a little bit of work, but if I, so here's something that I made before. If I was to try and, this hole is filled in here and I'm going to try and unfill it, try and make it so that hole goes all the way through with a drill, there's a really good chance that this is going to split, because Jasmonite is a lot more brittle. There's a good chance that it's going to break. You can also pick little bits off, so if I really, really wanted to, I could probably snap this. I will not try to, it would take effort. I think you would struggle to do it by accident, but this stuff probably isn't going to be as hard wearing for stuff like jewellery than resin is, but I think it looks nicer in a lot of ways. So talking about the look, stuff that you can put in it. Most of the colours I use for resin work with Jasmonite. I've just recycled a lot of them. I do have a few like proper official Jasmonite colours. They work. Yeah, stuff you use for resin I tend to need more of than I would do in resin, or more of than I would if I'm using specific Jasmonite pigments, but they work for the most part. I actually have a video about that, will either be up now or will be going up soon, about different pigments in AC 730. So yeah, check that out if it's already out. The other thing is moulds. Most of the moulds you can use the same. I'm a bit more selective about my moulds because, so if we look at something like this, with resin, so you colour these lines in, so I've coloured this in with a silver pen, I just wanted it to be nice and subtle. With resin you'd colour this in again with a paint pen, and then you'd wipe it off with a piece of cloth and some acetone. You can do this with Jasmonite, but I find that the best way to do it is to sand the top. And what this means is you can only use moulds with this really deep line. So I also made these before. So this one I haven't sanded, and you can see that it just doesn't stand out as well. This has been cleaned as much as I can do with acetone, and I think this is cute. I actually kind of like it like this, but you can see that it's not as defined as something like this is. So normally I try and use ones that are a bit more indented than this one, like this one is here, because it's got really strong kind of deep lines. The other thing is that if you are working hello. If you are working with 730 or any sort of special effects Jasmonite that has like the granite texture that this one does, you will have to sand it to get that texture to come up. So if you are, you know, doing something like this, there's a good chance you're going to sand the pan off. So that is something else to think about. Okay, I think that is everything. I went into a lot more detail than I thought I would. This video is 15 minutes long, so I'm going to end it here. If you have any questions about changing from resin to Jasmonite, let me know down in the comments. I'll be happy to help. If you guys have any requests or questions, leave them in the comments. What else was I going to say? Like, subscribe and all that jazz. New videos every Wednesday. What else do I say? Why is my brain just not working today? I had a list, and now that I'm off list, I don't know what. Bye.